Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Happy with Dr. Marissa every Tuesday at naturally high noon, broadcasting out of Burbank, California with UBN Go Studios and repeating on my CNBC NBC News Radio channel, KCAA number 1 FM, 106.5, 102.3, AM 1050, live streaming at kcaaradio.com, and then on demand everywhere. We've got Stitcher, we've got our new Amazon Music, thanks to Tony Sweet. We've got Stitcher, I'm on iTunes, and iHeartRadio on demand. So I'm here trying to splatter more hope and happiness on you, trying to get it all over you, because there's no gossip, no scandal, and no K words allowed on this show. No Kardashian talk at all, because I want you to focus on your own reality show and how you can be happy 88% of the time. And so I have guests and topics to that end. And we're doing a special series right now because of what's happening in this unplanned for, unexpected, uncontrollable, unsettling time. And that's a series called It's Not Black and White, or Is It? And so we have had guests like Jane Elliott, who was on Jimmy Fallon and on Red Table Talk, and she's absolutely incomparable and wonderful. She's the teacher that did the Brown Eye, Blue Eyes exercise in Iowa and on the Oprah show. And then she's now, continuing to educate us on that. I also had Akuyo Graham. I had Tom Garrett last 2 weeks, who's former KKK leader in Europe. If you missed any of those shows for this series, please go to my free subscribe YouTube channel where you can enjoy them and be educated on this thing called racism and how to end that. And so with the also passing of the incomparable RBG, I wanted to bring on someone who is legal counsel as well. He's my legal counsel for this show, as well as he's been an on-air legal commentator for years and years on O.J. Simpson trial, lots of very high profile cases as well. He's a law professor. He's a professor of criminal law and evidence law at Loyola. He covered the Michael Jackson, Timothy McVey trials, as well as the Scott Peterson and O.J. Simpson and the Clinton impeachment, working with CNBC, CBS, Kingworld, and Fox News Channel as their on-air legal correspondent and network soul.
Stan Goldman.
Editor, and we just got him, which is good. We were having a little technical difficulties. I'm just doing your introduction, Stan. So he's appeared as an expert on Entertainment Tonight, O'Reilly, Hannity, and Trades Like People. In addition, he spent a couple years as special correspondent for the New York Daily News, which published 90 of his stories. He's so accomplished that he's even been immortalized in the popular Doonesbury comic strip. He's here to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as well as updates on the Breanna Taylor case. So without further ado, please welcome back to my studio, Stan Goldman.
It's a pleasure to be back on with you.
And it's a real pleasure that you are on.
Yeah.
So
I know we've been having some technical problems getting on this morning. It was
it's too bad. We had you on Zoom. You couldn't see us, but we could see you. I don't know if Tony has the shot
Maybe
now,
that's all
but
that counts.
yeah, that's all that counts. But I'm so glad that you are with us again. You came on, I guess, earlier this year, right before COVID landed. And
That's right. I was in studio, if I believe.
That's right. And so we're not today because of social distancing, but I'm glad that I still get your brains and your voice.
Well,
so,
the voice you're getting, the brains, I guess, will be the people listening will have to decide that.
yeah. So you, I wanted to have you talk about a couple things. One is obviously the legacy of Ruth and the Supreme Court shenanigans right now. So that's one topic. And then after break, I wanted you to also talk about the Breanna Taylor case and
Sure.
give your legal expertise on both of those matters. So let's just start with, well, first of all, I think I really wanted to take a breath and just recognize the brilliance and the contribution and the legacy of RBG, because I can't even put words to what she has done for not only women, but the rights of us. It's just an amazing contribution that she has given with her life. I found out that she worked through, just like Chadwick Boseman worked through 5 bouts of cancer. Chadwick, when he was going through treatment, nobody even really knew. He just did it. And come to find out when I was doing research, 5 bouts of cancer, and she just kept going and kept working and kept doing and kept I don't know, just such an amazing role model for going through challenges. What do you best acknowledge and remember and tribute to her?
Actually, in many ways, although obviously she was a Supreme Court justice for many years and wrote many opinions, she was prevented from writing a lot of majority opinions for a period of time. What would happen was there's a tradition on the court that the most senior judge in the majority, if they're not the Chief Justice, gets to designate who would write the opinion. And the conservatives on the court wanted to keep Ginsburg from ever writing an opinion. So if there was a majority of 5, you'd often get some conservatives sort of leaning over and kind of just titularly joining the majority so that somebody else could actually write the opinion than her. So there was a certain number of opinions she would have written that she was sort of denied the ability to write. I think in many ways her most significant legacy, and this will sound strange, may have been before she became a justice. She had, I think, 5 major U.S. Supreme Court cases as an attorney, which led to her appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court. And they were dealing with gender equality and equal pay, and of course the very first opinion she wrote once she became a justice that really got notoriety was changing the rules at VMI, Virginia Military Institute, and making certain that women could enter. But also on her way up, before she became a justice, one of her major cases was on gender equality, was making sure that men could also collect Social Security from their widows. In other words, it was one-way street at a time, where if a husband died, a wife could collect under the correct circumstances Social Security, but men couldn't if their wife died. They couldn't collect theirs. So and she was instrumental in getting those rules changed. And even when she lost, which she did on an equal rights case in the early part of the 2000s, when Obama became president in 2009. Some people credit her advocacy and her dissenting opinion in that case with part of the reason why there was a real push to change the law in Congress, which did happen. Of course, Obama signed it, dealing with fair pay and equal pay. So I think her legacy is considerable in time, given the time she was on the court and the fact that she was probably the most eloquent of the of the sitting liberals on the court, and certainly a dynamic force. I just fear that that she may go down in history more known for dying when she did than for the amazing life that she had. I mean, that is a real concern. You don't know what historians are going to look at. Is her not having retired from the court when she was urged to, back when Obama was president, going to be viewed by historians as the most significant thing about her tenure on the court? I hope not, but there's a chance.
So for Canadians, for people who were born in Canada, that's the excuse I'm using if I don't understand the machinations of the U.S. government and the Supreme Court workings. Explain that one a little. I actually researched this, so I do understand it. So, but the whole, for those who aren't necessarily following, what is that debate now, or what is that criticism of why she did not retire when she was asked to?
She had been appointed to the court. She was already in her early 60s, which in my opinion is an appropriate age for a justice to be appointed. The problem with these lifetime appointments we have to the U.S. Supreme Court and many Supreme Courts around the country, but certainly the U.S. Supreme Court, is that people can serve forever. So you appoint a 48-year-old, for example, like the present appointment, about to be debated, that President Trump has put forward. Then you get somebody on the court who, if they lived as long as and served as long as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, would be on the court for 39 years, which would sort of set a record. And those may become much more common as younger judges have been appointed and as people's life expectancies are rising. Well, right. When Obama was elected, Ginsburg had been on the court for roughly about 16 years. When Obama became president, she was already well into her, into her 70s, and there was a movement by a number of legal scholars around the country, liberal legal scholars, urging her to retire. There was some sort of movement also for only slightly younger Clinton appointee on the court, Justice Breyer. But Ginsburg had health issues. She was already at a time when most people would retire, and there was a campaign to urge her to retire. I mean, Erwin Chemerinsky, who is presently dean of Berkeley Law School, was leading part of that drive to get her to leave the court, and she basically laughed at it and said, I've got a lot more time and a lot more to do on the court. And she was, of course, right. She did much of her best work after 2009 when they wanted her to retire so that Obama could replace her. But at the end, they both turned out to be right. She was still competent and capable of doing work till the end many years later, but also passed away at a time when the position will be filled by a conservative, and that could create constitutional instability, given the battle over whether you should be allowed to appoint somebody in your last months in office or not, which we went through in the Obama campaign, in the Obama presidency, and how many justices should we have on the court? If a new justice is appointed, and by any chance Biden wins this next election, should he sort of get even with the Republicans who have not exactly cheated, but have sort of used the maneuverings available to them? And one of the maneuverings for Biden would be to appoint extra judges on the court, 2, 4. All he needs is congressional approval for that. And there's a way of doing that with just simple majorities. And so it's possible that if the Democrats also take the Senate by a vote, he would have votes to be able to add any number of justices to the court. And what happens then the next time if a Republican comes in and has control of both legislatures? Do they then make it 15 justices as opposed to 13, or 13 as opposed to 11? So it's created a unique situation.
Getting visions of a football team on the Supreme Court, just the number of players. Yeah. But
well, there's good reason actually to have more justices on the court. That number 9 was set in 1866. It was pure historical accident. We were in the midst of Andrew Johnson taking over for Lincoln when he was assassinated, and Johnson was a conservative Southern Democrat, but he was the only Southern senator who had remained loyal to the Union. And even back then, Lincoln not perhaps true today for President Trump's campaign, but Lincoln was worried about drawing in new voters from sort of the middle. And so he appointed as his VP this conservative Democrat. And when Lincoln died, Johnson took over, and it turns out Johnson's basic, racist tendencies reemerged, and the Congress was worried that in the midterms he might be able to get votes to pack the court. So they created a law saying, nope, you can't do that. And that's how we ended up with 9. Well, there's a lot more work on the court than there was in 1866. You could probably use 17 justices and get a lot of work out of them, but it just always stayed 9.
Right. So I can just, I haven't had time to check the feed, but I know all my history buff and political buff listeners are just having a great time listening to all of this, which is something we don't really, address or think about too much. But it definitely is impacting us. We had a Supreme Court justice who truly was about equal rights, not just about equal rights for women, but the example, I didn't know about that, which is awesome, that she was truly about equal rights for all. And if you've just tuned in and you're wondering who is on my platform again today, the voice is familiar. His name is Stan Goldman, and he is a legal correspondent on air, on camera. Not today, we couldn't get the Zoom to work for him, but we still have his voice and his brains. Yes, the brains are there. Here on Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It. Get Happy with Dr. Marissa. So Stan, this whole situation now then, you said that there might be other possibilities of what could transpire or what needs to transpire right now.
Well, I mean, it seems fairly likely, and everybody believed that a new justice will probably be appointed, and probably sometime within the next, month, maybe before the election, maybe after. There are political reasons. I mean, I'm not a political scholar, but it's fairly obvious that there are reasons why the Republicans might want to get it done. Trump probably wants to get it done now, and there may be reasons why the Republican Senate wants to wait a little while. The reasons why Trump wants it now is because if this new justice is appointed and she ends up on the court in the early part of November, she could not only sit on cases like the question as to whether Obamacare is constitutional or not, but she might also be able to sit on any litigation involving the election. So that Trump would like to get her on now and have 5, ardent conservatives, and Roberts, who is a conservative but not on every issue like most of the other conservative justices on the court. And he would want get that done now. I think the Republican senators may be a little frightened that if they put her on, their supporting voters may think it's not that urgent to keep Trump in the White House, because they would have already gotten themselves a very strong majority to potentially overrule Roe versus Wade or several other cases that the court will have to or may be confronted with. So it's an interesting battle. And then, of course, as I said, there's the question as to what happens if that does take place. Does Biden listen to the left-wing progressive element of the Democratic Party, which would like to have him appoint some extra justices? Mm-hmm. Heck, 2 justices. If he appointed a 10th and 11th justice, all that would do is put us back in exactly the position we were, which is to have Roberts as the swing vote on the court, a very conservative justice, but one who doesn't vote with the conservatives, lockstep. So it makes for, the old Chinese curse. People think it's a blessing, but it's an old Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
And you know that I'm really not Swedish. I am Chinese.
Well, it is a wise curse.
Yes. Yeah, I know. It's people think that I'm being positive when I say it's really interesting. But as you know, that doesn't necessarily mean it's positive. So it's just interesting. It is, when you, going back to what you said about her death being more remembered than the work in her life. I hope that is not so. I know
I hope that is not true. I was a big
Yeah.
fan. I was a big fan of Ruth Ginsburg. I thought she wrote very well, and I think one of the things she should be remembered for, and people underestimate, is the fact she wrote with such control. I mean, she considered herself a good friend of Anton Scalia. They would go to the opera together. But Scalia, when he disagreed with Ginsburg, he would vilify her on the court. His opinions would say horrible things about her. And when she was differing with him, she'd just go, "Oh, well, that's I can understand Justice Scalia's opinion in this case, but there was no rancor in her writing. She wasn't trying to get even with anybody. She wasn't vengeful. She was a good spirit. Mm-hmm. She was a noble soul, mm-hmm. and didn't lose her temper when almost anybody else would have."
Mm-hmm. And so that brings me to an unplanned question, which is, this whole, our shift in our culture, in our country, in our leadership, in more women, in the contributions that are different, that are maybe more balanced, or the qualities that women bring to leadership, the qualities that women bring, as Ruth did, to the Supreme Court. And just hearing the contrast of the male, normal, usual, vilifying, put down, make it personal, just completely cut you off at the knees, which it still happens when I actually do turn on some, political anything. It's just, that's the way it is. It's like you attack. Is there any hope that as a country that we get to the kinder, softer, more balanced, more controlled that Ruth demonstrated? Is there hope, or is this also going to, with a president that? Go ahead.
I don't know. When Ginsburg was appointed, she received basically almost a unanimous vote from the Senate. Can you imagine that happening today? Without anybody, no matter how qualified they were. Ginsburg was very qualified. She was, obviously there was a political reason. We needed more. It was good to have more women on the court. She spoke for a very particular type of discrimination that she had opposed, gender. So she didn't want anything based on gender. She wanted everything to be equal between men and women under the law, much of which I think she accomplished or joined in accomplishing. So there was a reason to appoint her. But Merrick Garland, who Obama nominated, was highly regarded, nonpartisan. People saw him as jurist. I watched Merrick Garland try a case once. I was in Denver, Colorado, and watched him when he was a prosecutor, bringing the case against Timothy McVey, and brought a very impressive case against Timothy McVey, which obviously resulted in a conviction and the death penalty. Mm-hmm. He was a very, very skilled lawyer, and his opinions on the court were highly regarded. And Barnett, who's been nominated by Trump, if she was a little older, she would seem to me to be a classic example of someone that a conservative Republican would want to appoint. She was very smart. She has a good, strong academic background. Nobody questions her extremely high level of intelligence. She has some experience in the law. Although, as I said, at 48, she's kind of young for a Supreme Court justice. But nobody is going to let these, in these days, nobody's getting through the court. And I don't know how long that's going to continue through the Senate to be on the court unless, if they differ in politics. This has been going on for a while. But it's sort of really reached horrible depths here.
Epic proportions. Epic. Yes. So yeah, another unplanned question, but it is a curiosity of mine. In the old days, we could say, let's agree to disagree. In the old days, we could say, we probably don't want to talk about religion and politics because, we're not going to be able to, but it's okay. I still like you, or we can still go out for dinner. We can still do things. Now, what happened? Is it because of COVID that everybody is just on this heightened, unsettled place? Is it because of the disparity between Republicans and Democrats, as evidenced through Trump and Obama, as just like the furthest possible profiles? Why and what and are we going to survive this? I mean, I've never been unfriended, or have I unfriended so many people, and it hurts my heart because we somehow can't separate now the politics from the person.
You're asking the billion-dollar question. I mean, philosophers will probably argue about this forever. I personally would draw an analogy as an old history major from UCLA. I would, and the author of a history book. I would draw the analogy back to, believe it or not, the most important human invention of the last 2,000 years, the printing press. People think the printing press was a great and wonderful invention, and it was, but it also, you could look back and say it was the reason for the Reformation and the reason for the wars that took place, involving Protestants versus Catholics, because it gave the general public the ability to read the arguments and read all these things could now be distributed as opposed to just being handwritten. So every major change in technology that allows communication brings with it unintended consequences. Some are very good, some are very bad, and and I don't know if we ever solve the bad parts completely, but with the internet, with easy communications, with multiple news networks where you can just, if you're a liberal, you can sit around watching MSNBC every day, never hear a good thing about a Republican in history except maybe Lincoln. If you're watching Fox News Channel, my old alma mater that I worked for full-time for over 10 years, you could watch it all day and never know that the president really had a tax problem, and may, and may not be a good businessman, or may not have been totally forthcoming on his taxes. I mean, you'll never hear that. Well, I mean, so you listen to the news you want, you friend the people you want, so you only get sent back to you those things you agree with, so it doesn't cause you any tension. And also, I think it is the ease of broad communications and the amount of, now you don't have to listen to anybody else. You don't have to read the New York Times and just pick out the articles you like. You got all sorts of things to read that agree with you, but also the alienation of humans. We sit around. I mean, I have friends who won't talk to me on the phone. When I call, they won't answer, and they'll write back and say, "Why are you calling? Just text me." Or, and now we can't even get together. Before it was, people would not get together because they could just talk on the computer. I think there's an alienation in which there's a separation between us that never existed before in terms of human contact.
Right. And therefore we lost the kind in humankind as one of the negative consequences. And yes, that is $1 billion question. I'm glad that you answered it as you did. I think that unbiased news right now is an oxymoron, and you can, whatever you choose as your BS, your belief system, you can support that, and there's nothing coming through. And until we can all step back and I'm talking to myself because it's not easy, to sit and just entertain or understand the differences, which I don't know if we're going to do. But the good news is we're still alive and we're going to get through this. And there is an end. It's called the election. So go out and vote, whatever your BS is, and do the research. Don't just go on the networks. I was actually highlighted as the Women's History Month special last year on Fox in DC. So I didn't realize that alignment there, but I don't even tell anybody because of the reputation of Fox right now. But I mean, they can't be that bad if they interviewed me, right?
Well, look, I told you that I'm a person I have got something in life that I'm convinced no one will not only has ever had, but will ever have, and that is I qualify for the pension at the LA County Public Defender's Office and the Fox News Channel. That is a combination I don't believe anybody will ever be able to say again. I was their legal correspondent for a decade. I spent 8 years as an LA County Public Defender. I've been obviously I still am a law professor full time and tenured, luckily, so they can't fire me even if they don't like me. But the idea of having a public defender as a regular guest on the next public defender on the Fox News Channel these days doesn't seem likely. I mean, as I like to say, look, Roger Ailes hired me. Roger Ailes fired me after a little over 10 years. Thought he'd had enough of a non-political, I think, reporter on the air. I think he wanted somebody who had a little bit of a political slant, like Andrew Napolitano, who joined me as being one of the legal analysts after I'd been doing it for legal correspondents after I've been doing it for a few years. So, unfortunately, everybody's in their own corner, and they're if you don't agree with them, you're on the other team, and we couldn't possibly root for the White Sox if we're Cubs fans, and it just forgive the baseball analogy. But look, about times, I hate to promote my own book, but I wrote a book about my mother who survived the camps. Yeah, but my mother, one of the things I write in my book about my mother was, one time when I was in my 20s, I was having a very terrible time. And a terrible time. Something was really going wrong. I was moping, and my mother just looked at me and said, in words that will be shocking to your audience, was, Stanley, and she spoke in this accent, it's better than being in Auschwitz. And, that's from someone who knew. Yeah. That, believe it or not, that's probably the most optimistic thing my mother ever said to me, because the reality was, things aren't that bad right now. Right. Things can always get worse, and they could get a lot worse. We don't live in terrible, terrible times. We live in unpleasant times. Yes. But you have to put things in perspective. And I know I'm a terrified flyer. I hate turbulence. I'm fine until we hit a bump, and then irrationality just overwhelms me. But when that happens to me, I always think of those words of my mother, and I go, I'm sitting there on a nice airplane, and they're serving me a drink, and I'm getting to eat, and I'm going someplace on a vacation. It could be voice.
Yes, I that's my Happy 80 tool, Happy 88 tool, ICBW. It could be worse. So yes, I must have channeled your mom. And it's time to take a break right now. Go to our sponsors. Thank them for the support in bringing us this show and this particular episode. We'll be back in 2 and 2. Peace in, peace out. World peace through inner peace. Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mack's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamack.com today. Do you have a great product or service that you would like to promote with a tantalizing commercial? Do you want to get the word out to take advantage of holiday sales? Do you have a small PR budget? Then the Be the Best You Can Be and Broadcast It Zoom workshop is for you. Dr. Marissa, celebrity host and producer of the 2016 Podcast of the Year, award-winning iHeartRadio and CNBC syndicated show, take my advice, I'm not using it, will help you craft a 30-second commercial with your Happy 88 creative process. Early bird price, only $88. Sign up at www.drmarissa.life today. And we are back. You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get happy with Dr. Marissa every Tuesday at naturally high noon, broadcasting out of Burbank, California with UBN Go Studios. And then on Saturday at 6 Pacific Standard Time with KCAA, my CNBC NBC News radio channel, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and then anytime, anywhere on demand at iHeartRadio. And today I have brought back Mr. Stan Goldman, who is a very established and credible and delightful legal correspondent. You've seen him on media covering many, many different trials. And he was here earlier this year talking about his very interesting book. He mentioned his mom earlier, and the book, we'll talk a little bit about that. But I brought him today, one, to mark and remember and protect the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then also to talk about Breanna Taylor. So we're going to cover those right now. Welcome back to the studio, Stan Goldman.
Hi. I think, by the way, suddenly my Zoom has started working. If you want to try it, I don't know if it's, I don't know if you can hear me or not on Zoom, but it started to work, if that matters.
I think it's good. Do we have the thumbs up, Tony?
We do.
Yes. All right. Yay.
Yay is right.
Except you just walked away from your chair.
I know.
Okay.
I had to put down my phone. I'm going to hang up the phone now so we don't get any, as the business says, mixed minus, which means you can hear yourself back in the phone.
Feedback. Yes.
All right, there we are.
Yay.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's start with Breanna Taylor. So tell me, well, I mean, I have a whole host of things to say, but I don't want to say them. I want your opinion and your assessment of what's going on right now.
Well, it's, the moment, well, first of all, I got my first start as a scholar writing and studying and publishing articles about, of all things, knock and announce laws that require the police to knock and announce. Matter of fact, if you actually opened up the federal codes that governs knock and announce, you would actually see my article, which I wrote when I was still in my 20s, cited there as the analysis of what it is. So for me, of course, I hear about a case like that and I go, oh my gosh, this is what I wrote about those many decades ago. The problems with the knock and announce rules in America, they can be very dangerous, especially when you use what we've talked about, which is no knock warrants, which means you just come and you smash a door in. But even in the middle of the night, if you knock, police don't always sort of announce themselves too loudly. Police smash. People have got guns. This sort of thing has not only happened here, it's happened many times in the past. It's quite dangerous, and especially no knock warrants should be given out with the greatest of care. I don't think the chain of command here worked very well with this whole beginning that resulted in the tragedy. The police officers who went to the home to serve the warrant thought they were serving it to arrest somebody who was a very dangerous drug dealer. They were different guys than the ones who investigated the case and got the warrant. And there was a disconnect between the two. I think if the guys who had gotten the warrant had gone, they would have realized they already had under arrest the dangerous felon. But these guys didn't know it. So it's a terrible breakdown of the system.
How could that have even happened?
Right, exactly. Well, that's what happened. You think the police are no better, no worse than any other bureaucracy. Things get lost unless you have very strict rules about having to, follow the case yourself all the way through. You can have these kinds of tragedies take place. And there was one involving a wealthy man up in Northern California years ago. The police got the idea that he was involved in big marijuana trading. He got a big mansion up there. He's a rich guy. He was white. They broke into the home in the middle of the night. So it isn't just in poor parts of town. And he didn't know who it was. He got a rifle. Police saw him with a rifle and they killed him. And so this happens all over in all parts of the country. Right. Especially we have to worry about that in communities that are being policed more heavily than others. But the most interesting thing of the last few days has been the fact that the grand jury didn't indict anybody for involuntary manslaughter, let's say. I'm not saying they should have. I don't know the details of the case. I think we have a lot that will still come out. But as soon as the attorney general said, nothing I can do, the grand jury doesn't want to indict, I went, this guy is being political and completely disingenuous. Because there's one thing any criminal lawyer knows, and that is a grand jury does and only does exactly what the prosecutor wants them to do. So in this case, it means the prosecution didn't ask for an indictment for homicide. Now, I'm not saying they should have returned one, but the attorney general making us think that it's all on the grand jury resulted in this amazing circumstance. And once one of the grand jurors said, hey, I want to be freed from my vow of silence here through a lawyer because I want to talk about what they asked us to do. And this grand juror claims in this statement, they never asked us to bring a homicide indictment. We were never given any evidence of that. We weren't given the chance. Happens over and over again. When there was a politically hot potato case, prosecutors just like to blame not filing on the anonymous grand jurors. And it's not true. It's rare. There's only one provision of the Bill of Rights that's never been made applicable to the states. There's a right to trial, jury, and lawyer. The only one that's never made applicable is grand jury indictment. Why? Nobody wants it because it didn't work out the way the founding fathers thought it was going to work out. Didn't provide any protection.
Okay. So let me break this down for anybody who's not familiar with the case. I hope you are, but just in case, because a lot of people don't even want to watch the news or what's going on because it's so unsettling and upsetting. So what you've just illuminated, though, is going contrary to the automatic knee-jerk reaction of when people heard that the grand jury did not find them guilty and just like a little slap on the whatever because the shots were random. That the one of the reactions I heard was, oh, just typical, right? White jurors not holding white police accountable. So what you're saying, though, is that the prosecutor didn't even ask the grand jury to make a ruling on whether it was manslaughter or not. It was just on that one, what was it, volunteer? What was it?
Well, it was recklessly firing a weapon. Three counts of it because one of the officers just kept shooting and through walls where there were children in other apartments. So that's what they're charged with. And once again, the one thing you've got to understand about legal cases, I covered them for 12 and a half years as a reporter. I've had 70 jury trials myself in my life. I've been to the Supreme Court and back on cases. It's almost never as it's initially depicted in the press. If you don't know the details of a case, you can't really know. I'm not saying the officer wasn't guilty of manslaughter. I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying that as soon as the grand jury came back with no manslaughter, my initial reaction was the prosecuting attorney must have told them not to, or not even brought it up. And now a grand juror has come out and said,
you were right, which is not something that we would think about because we're not in the legal system or we're not experts in that system. So what you're telling me is completely mind-blowing because it takes the whole, where your finger's pointing to a different place. And what you said absolutely too is all you hear is where you choose to read it too. So if you're reading the account of what happened from a news network that is very interested in saying that everybody's making too big of a deal of Black Lives Matter, and it's really over attention to the Black community, and it should be all lives matter or blue lives matter, is not going to tell you what you just told us, because that's not.
Look, the same thing happened in the notorious, you have to be older to remember this, the John Benet Ramsey case, which became very famous because that poor little child of 5 was killed or found dead in her home. And the district attorney brought to a grand jury the idea of indicting the parents. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the grand jury proceeding, the DA just comes out and says, no, there's no indictment, and leaves. And it turned out the grand jury was under its own head of steam and was going to bring an indictment, in spite of the fact the DA was just bringing it to the grand jury to do exactly the same thing, alibi and blame it on the grand jury for not indicting. But they were going to be what district attorneys call a runaway grand jury. They were going to do it themselves. And so we ended it right in the middle. So that's,
that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what
so
happened.
that's
I
what
wondered
happened
about that.
cases.
Yeah. So we won't know for sure is what you're saying. So we know for sure that, they did not knock, right? They had the warrant that was a no knock, and they went in, and then her boyfriend did a warning shot, which then led to them just open fire.
There's a dispute right now whether he did a warning shot or whether he shot a police officer. His defense attorneys are claiming that he did not shoot the police officer. It was one of the other officers' bullets that did it. That's one of the things I said we don't know yet. We haven't had an independent analysis from my point of view to decide whose bullet it was that actually wounded the police officer. It may very well have been his gun. It may not have been. We just don't know all the evidence yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're out of time, unfortunately. It always goes so fast when we're here. Yes, that was my last question, which was, where do we get your book, and where do we find you to follow you?
My book, I think the best thing, given the fact that it's somewhat complicated, you've got a picture of it up there now. It's a slightly complicated title. It's Left to the Mercy of a Rude Stream. All you have to do is go to a bookstore and ask for anything by Stan Goldman, or you can go to Amazon, which oddly enough, almost coincidental with our meeting today, has just reduced the price. So at the moment it's on 40% off sale on Amazon temporarily. So it's available in hardback under Stan Goldman. There's really only one Stan Goldman that you'll find there. It's on download. There's a audio version of it that was published, and it's about my mother's escape, really quite literally, from a death camp. It's a story she sort of didn't understand the implications of, and after she passed away, I spent years researching it and finally decided to write a book about it. And I got to tell you, it is a combination it's a psychological book, but it's also, believe it or not, I think you read it, something of a thriller.
Yes, it is. It is. And it's all true.
It's all true. There's not a made up thing in it. It took me years to research.
And without giving a spoiler alert, it actually is related to the downfall of Adolf Hitler.
It is.
So
to my shock, once I was researching it, I put two and two together, and the escape was, let's just say, blame was set in the Nazi high command for this, if you will, escape, if I can call it that, and it ended up demoralizing Hitler so much because of who was responsible for it, that it had great impact on the hierarchy of the Third Reich, and may very well have resulted in believe it or not, the war ending when it did. Yeah.
Absolutely. So don't say anymore. We want people to get the book and read it. Thank you so much, Stan Goldman, for coming back to studio.
If you want to listen to me talk again, you can always get the audio version, or you can buy the book.
There you go. There you go. Thanks so much, Stan, for coming back to the studio. This is Dr. Marissa, reminding you to always remember it's about balance. And keep it tuned. This is my 437th consecutive week on the air, bringing you Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get happy with Dr. Marissa. Peace in, peace out. World peace through inner peace.